In a distance of up to 650 kilometers, 3 airports have been struck by the Ukrainians, while the Ukrainians keep advancing in Kursk region, where the Kursk offensive is continuing. In this situation report about the war in Ukraine, we'll talk about this as well as about any other changes along the front line, international aid, and we have a lot to say, so let's dive right in. Now, initially, we'll talk about the airstrikes that have happened. We have here the Financial Times, Ukraine's largest drone attack so far that has happened. We have Riba here saying that 121 objects were shot down by them. So we have basically the Russians admitting that at least 121 projectiles were fired at them. And we have a video here of the airfield in Nizhny Novgorod. We see a Ilyushin 76 in the background. And I guess that's a bunker or at least some protective object here. And we see the drone diving down in the background and they're shooting from it as well. And here it comes down and hits something. I cannot confirm that it destroyed anything. We have satellite pictures here from the Borisoglepsk airfield. I guess something like this. This is showing what was struck here and what has changed. We see that the corners there have somewhat changed. Like this is looking different. It's definitely damaged here. The building here is damaged, but in total I'm not able to assess the damage. The Russians struck back though. In a video published, it shows Myrhorod airfield once again being attacked with an Iskander. This is a Sukhoi 27, which is then being hit and destroyed. Now there are some claims that it's a fake target, a decoy. An argument is because the smoke is white, and one argument is that even the Russians admitting it, from what I've seen, that was sarcastic by the Russian source admitting it. At least the context clearly says it. I am not able to tell you whether that the fact that the smoke directly after the hit is white means that it's a decoy or not. It's possible that it's a decoy, and the Ukrainians should have learned by now that Myrhorod is under surveillance and is getting struck. So it's fairly possible that it was a decoy, but I simply can't say whether it was one. Here we have report that a Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot has had his last flight. This obviously would indicate that the Ukrainians on their side have lost a MiG-29, even though it's possible that he was flying a different plane as well, like the famous English-speaking pilot Juice, who died in an accident with a L-39. So this is not a clear proof of anything, but if I'm already talking about airstrikes, planes lost, then it should be mentioned that a Ukrainian MiG-29 was probably at least lost, even though I'm lacking any proof of this, and it's just my deduction from the informations we have. Now let's switch over to the Kursk offensive. Deep State Max still hasn't done an update. Zelensky said that since midnight, a couple of hours ago, he said since midnight we advanced 1 to 2 kilometers in several directions. It's his claim. He also claimed that at least 100 prisoners of war were already taken during the day. And we have the different maps here. Petrenko's map, fairly accurate usually. This is, I can't remember the name. This is another rather pro-Ukrainian map, but well-sourced usually. This is where they see the permanent control and influenced area. Here we have the Institute for the Study of War showing us that the advance to the east is significantly bigger, according to them. Here we have the live UA map also showing the Ukrainian control, and here is the Russian Riba map that is showing this as a current control. We do know that the Ukrainians have advanced further to the north. They are here now close to Kalinov, which is here. On the Deep State map, this is right here. So we know Ukrainian presence here, which makes it likely that Olgovka and Kremanoe are now under Ukrainian control. Likely, though not proven. We do know that the Ukrainians are bypassing towns that have stiff defense. The Ukrainians have also been spotted close to Kautschuk again, a little bit south than the last time, but still they are in the direction of Kautschuk. And this is up here. they are also still operating. A new map is also, a new position has also been seen. A video, they published a video where they are marching through Plechovo. This is down here. And by now they have also taken Borki and the town of Spalnoye down here, because we do have the evidence that they are now in Krpets, further to the east here, as we have visual evidence of them being shelled by the Russians here in the east between Krpets and Kamisnohe. So the Ukrainians are already at this point, they're advancing in the south and pushing further to the east. The interesting part is what Riba is saying to all of this. Now they are claiming local battles continue, no enemy advances are recorded. Now Ukrainian resources are posting footage from Russian villages that were captured in the first days of the invasion. Interesting part is that Riba, at least from their point of view, has a point. Because the Riba map, which I continue showing you every time we have a new map, was showing more areas under Ukrainian influence or Ukrainian control than in the past. So if they already said Borki is under Ukrainian control 3 days ago, then obviously a video proving that today is nothing. It doesn't prove that anything has changed. We do know, though, that they still have advanced to the east, and we know that positions in the north are fresh, where the Ukrainians have recently been. So while I can confirm fresh advances, I have not yet seen the Ukrainians up here. At least to some degree, the Russians might have a point that some of the videos that are being published now are already a couple of days old. We had that before. We already know that Guyevo was under Ukrainian control, and I think the video of them raising their flag appeared 3 days later. So the Ukrainians are still advancing in the area, even though among serious analysts, the majority is still unclear what their objective even is, but we'll come back to this in the overall assessment of the current situation. Let's continue with the front line here. And here we have, again, fighting reported here at Kolotilovka, I think is the name. This is here. We have Slatkov reporting 3 attacks was on Kolotilovka. So supposedly the Ukrainians try to cross over here into Belgorod region as well. In the northern front, we have several geolocations of changes in the control of territory. At Lyboke, the Ukrainians have been pushed back to the west of it. The Russians are now here, and I can show it right now as well. They've also been pushed somewhat southeast of Lyboke between Lukyansky and Selene. This is here where they have been, and here. To this point, the Russians have advanced over the last 48 hours, as far as I can see it. The Russians have also advanced in Vovchansk, so the claims that the Ukrainians are pushing them back seems to be unclear. But as I said in the last situation report about this, that while I have not seen evidence, we do have visual evidence, though, that they have crossed the Sobrona street here in the center. Not a major change, but this means they have crossed this street here to this very point. It shows that the Russians are still in the south of the northern part of Vovchansk. Overall, I do not see that the situation has changed massively. Before we switch over, I forgot something about Sumy direction. Now, the Ukrainians are talking about 40 to 50 glide bomb attacks daily on Sumy. This should mean that glide bombs attacks are flown less in other directions, because in the past the Russians were keeping up roughly 100 strikes per day. Unless this has substantially changed, this would mean that half of the strikes are now in the Sumy region, obviously to hold back the Ukrainians in Kursk, but this should give some improved situation along other parts of the front line. North of the Siversky Donetsk, no change in territory. South of the Siversky Donetsk, we have some clarification about Ivano Darivka. As some of you are new here, the Russians were raising their flag at this point roughly 2 weeks ago, more or less. Later, we had the Ukrainians being spotted here, while the Russians were here. So it was unclear how they got here. Did they go over Spirne? Did they come from the south? Are they still in Ivano Darivka? This, now we finally have some kind of clarification, because the Ukrainians are south of it. now in this direction the Ukrainians are, and there's a video showing Ukrainians. You can see it here. They're coming from the right, from the town of Spirne. They are being picked up by an IFV, and this was geolocated. So we have Ukrainian presence confirmed roughly here, and we have Ukrainians going here and then driving away this way. In a troop rotation. This should show that the western part of Spirne is still in Ukrainian hands. So whatever happened here at Ivano-Darivka, I can't really say. Maybe a group of 10 Russians broke through, raised their flag, and was then destroyed or withdrew. I have no idea. Maybe this area in between is actually contested, even though it doesn't make too much sense. But it seems clear that the Ukrainians are still in Spirne and they are operating south of Ivano-Darivka. So Ivano-Darivka should not be under Russian control as of now. That seems to be almost certain. West of it, we have the Russians advancing at Klishivka. They are now here at this point. We also have a geolocation here. It's going to be hard finding all of them with all of the points here, all of the tabs. We have them north of Klishivka. Also interesting, you can see the fortification work here, but they have been geolocated here, which means that the north of the town is or west of the town, and here is the high ground, is at least partially under Russian control. We had the Russians operating here before, and we had them operate in Klishivka and to the south of it. I do not think Deep State Map is accurate here at this point. At least the gray zone should be extended roughly until this here, and it's probably at least partially Klishivka should be under Russian control as of now. Further to the south, we have a small Russian advance in Zalisne. Let me zoom out so you see it better. Here in Zalisne, the Russians have reached roughly this point. Not a big change in the control of territory, but it means they are advancing and have reached basically the end of Zalisne towards the west. They already did it down here, so that's not a fundamental game changer. And we already have the Ukrainians withdrawing from here, so the risk of them being cut off is getting smaller and is no longer that serious, as this seems to be the last of the Ukrainian troops, whereas before they had been roughly here, and this would have obviously been a much bigger danger in this area. There were Ukrainian counterattacks in New York, though, and they have been at least partially successful. We have Ukrainians operating here, and we have them operating here. This doesn't mean they have taken control of it, but this means that this here is the high-rises, in the center of the high-rises, and this is the area east of it. So here, Ukrainians were operating, here, and roughly here. This doesn't mean that they in the north have been cut off or anything like this. We shouldn't go too far yet, but we see that the Ukrainians were able to push the Russians back, at least to a certain degree, from the visual evidence we have right now. Further west in the Pokrovsk region, the situation is bad. Over the last 2 days, the Russians took the towns of it's not even accurate here, the town of Lysychne, and the town of Syridovivka, I think, something like this. Let's continue fast. They have reached the outskirts of Novotoretsk, and they have entered Rodivka. So in the whole area up here in the north, they are pushing towards the west and have gained significant ground up to 2 kilometers from what I've seen. So the Russians keep advancing in the Pokrovsk region, and they keep advancing towards the road here between Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar. The majority of Shelane is also captured. We have it here on the map from Petrenko. Let me quickly see it. Here you can see it no, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Here. Shelane, he says that the majority is under Russian control and the rest is gray area. So the Ukrainian presence in Shelane should no longer be significant. Shelane is about to fall as well, which means the next town in the south that is stopping the advance towards Pokrovsk is seriously endangered. Further south, I have additional advances of the Russians in Konstantinivka. Here they have roughly reached, let's say this here. I should have a geolocation for this. Exactly this here is it. Here you can see they have advanced fairly a fair piece towards the northwest in this direction. And That's it from this region. The next change I have south of Orikhiv here, and here the Ukrainians managed to recapture this area here where we recently had a geolocation of the Ukrainians. Now we have of the Russians, I'm sorry. So this was probably under Russian control in between. Now we have fresh geolocation of the Ukrainians back in this position. Let's go to the overall situation. Zelensky said yesterday, he said that Ukraine is controlling 74 localities. This was understood by some as 74 villages, settlements, but this seems unlikely because it's far from anything we know so far. So he probably means some kind of different measurement, maybe city quarters counted as one, I don't really know. But now we have information, it's in German, but you can see it here, buffer zone. According to German news outlets, the Ukrainians are now saying that they want to set up a buffer zone. This could obviously be psyops, but they are now claiming that they want to create a buffer zone inside of Russia. Obviously also a reference to the so-called buffer zone that the Russians claim to want to set up. At the same time, they are saying they're going to set up a corridor for the civilians to leave the fighting area, both in the Russian-controlled area as well as towards Ukraine, to obviously spare them from injury and death in the fighting. But this would mean that by now, at least, they would claim that they want to stay. But as of now, it's still fairly unclear what's happening. After breaking into the Russian line, they managed to achieve a breakthrough, and we are still in the exploitation phase. This will continue for a while. We have no idea how long, but probably a few more days seems to be realistic. And then the big question for Ukraine will be how they are going to continue. Mick Ryan, the retired Australian general, basically says they could intend to continue a little further and try to set up a position there. They could try to hold what they currently have, or they could be withdrawing. It's unclear as of now, but each of the option carries different risks and reducing risks, obviously, according to the part of Russia that would be aimed to remain under control. Right now, we can also mention that the current offensive, while the majority of the serious analysts have not said what they think about it too much, like they haven't said what the aim for it is. I want to reference Anders Puk Nielsen, who I think is now and then watching the channel here. He said in a video, he said that the less equipment Ukraine gets, the less help Ukraine gets from the West, the more it is under pressure, and thus the more willing it is to escalate. And this is one of the things we see here. It has to do outrageous things to change the whole calculation, and an invasion into Russia was necessary for Ukraine, or at least the military leadership deemed it necessary, because they couldn't achieve a conventional victory in the east and the south. So any escalation right now is directly a responsibility of the lack of Western aid. But let's look at some voices to this. We have Mark Hertling. I think it's the first serious analyst. Of course, there are tons of analysts out there who some of them might be military analysts since 2022, but among the serious ones, I think he's the first one who actually puts it into a bigger framework. And here we have him. He says he thinks it's a demonstration, which is defined a show of force in an area where a decision is not sought, but an action is made to deceive the enemy or gain a short-term advantage. So he doesn't believe this has bigger objectives, further getting in or something, and he believes it's by design between a day and a few weeks, depending on the ability to resupply and secure the operation against enemy counterattacks. This is the first one, because we have at the same time Ben Hodges, for instance, also a retired general. We don't know and are not entitled to know Ukrainian objective, one of the other voices to this, but a ton of like Michael Kaufman is another one in his recent podcast also said, we don't really know yet. We'll have to see. At this point, we have a fraction of the knowledge. We don't know how many resources are actually available, how big are the reserves, what's the overall strategic situation, how many reserves does Ukraine actually have. We simply don't know. We have some publications. How much have they deployed here? Do they aim for a second axis of advance? All of these things are still unknown, but we do know that this is a bigger deal. Here we have a voice from the Donbas. It's a soldier fighting in the Donbas, and he says there was a defensive line, there were trenches, there were concrete bunkers, but it's hell if there are no men and the enemy keeps advancing day by day. This is a voice from the Donbas right now. We have this here. A voice, it's a German journalist who was just in Ukraine and was talking to soldiers advancing into Russia. Their confidence was striking and stood in stark contrast to other parts of the front line. I had been in Pokrovsk and Sabotage region just a week ago. The mood there was shifted. Soldiers told me about new recruits going AWOL or dying within a few days. So in the south and in the east, the situation is dire. The Ukrainian soldiers are under pressure, and I guess this will already have an effect, at least to have a success in another region. But as said, I'm not going to give a judgment about a situation that I can't, where I have a fraction of the knowledge to judge it as of now. But what we do have, this is 2 days ago, nothing has changed. Maybe a little less FPV drones, but they do not see that the enemy has gotten significantly weaker. And we have here the description. The same thing, I don't feel a decrease in intensity. Everything is being assaulted the same way. Also from the New York Times reporting there. And what we have here is interesting, though. This is from the Wall Street Journal. For now, Russia is struggling to contain Ukrainian advances. I think it's from yesterday. But some Ukrainian soldiers waiting to join the battle from Sumy, the Ukrainian regional capital on the border, said they had been pulled from already threadbare units on the Eastern Front in Ukraine, suggesting Kiev was already facing challenges finding fresh troops to maintain momentum. There's another quote further south. Another soldier said he was surprised to learn that he was being transferred to the Sumy border region as his unit was so short of men that infantry spent as long as 45 days straight in a trench. The 25-year-old had been stationed in Chasiv Yar, one of the hottest spots on the front line, until a week before the incursion. There's a higher concentration of troops in Kursk, he said, where he has been helping shore up the rear as Ukrainian forces push further forward. Compared with the east, the skies are less saturated with drones, which makes concealing movement easier. And others had been shifted to the Sumy region well in advance. The deputy commander of the squad that is taking part in the offensive said his unit has been sent there about 2 months ago, but only found out about the Kursk offensive right now. Oh, this was what I actually meant. I'm sorry. This is the problem if I only have bullet points. In a village near the Russian border, 2 Ukrainian soldiers awaiting orders to join the battle in Kursk. They had just arrived from the front near Pokrovsk. So the Ukrainians are pulling out troops towards the Kursk offensive while they are massively under pressure in the Donbas. I'm not going to judge this. I can't. I have no idea what the overall strategic assessment by Sirski is. In war, there are times where you accept losses, where you accept being pushed back in favor of a bigger objective. And I don't know that. I don't know his resources. I think from what we see here, we can say that obviously this is some kind of decision making, that the Ukrainian command sees the Kursk offensive so much more important than holding a few kilometers extra in the Donbas, that they weaken the Donbas for this operation. So this would be an indication that the overall offensive, and it doesn't have to be restricted to Kursk, this mind you. So the overall offensive activities should not be over within a few days, but we'll have to see. I'm not going to give an assessment about something, even though I see it among the comments where people accuse me of being too stupid to understand the overall goal and so on. I don't care about this. I don't care about people who want an assessment out of 10% of the information that are available. If generals can't give an assessment and say we have no clue, then who am I to say I have a clue? So as of now, we know that Ukraine does something big. Otherwise, they wouldn't withdraw units from a front line massively under pressure. But we'll have to keep watching how it continues. That's all we can say at this point. Then we have Intel Shitso claiming that with the capture of the rail station in Sucha, it was a massive boon to their massive boom or an improvement of their intelligence. Basically, he's saying now they got all the train plans, they got the communications, and he explains in this thread that the signal system for trains is remotely, and by by getting the data, the Ukrainians might in the future be able to see where a train is moving, which would obviously allow them to hit even moving targets until the Russians have fundamentally changed the overall situation here. If this is true, I have no competence to judge this, but this sounds like a massive improvement for the Ukrainians in an area that is probably for most of us under the radar. Then we have news from Putin. Putin has named Alexei Dyumin as responsible for the Kursk operation. He's a person with his confidence, with intelligence background, and a previous deputy defense minister. Now he's lieutenant general, but I didn't find him having a serious military career. He was at an intelligence military school, and he was working for the GRU, but to which degree he's actually a full-fledged general staff officer, I cannot say, because the Russians like to promote defense ministers to general rank, even if they have no proper military training. Shoigu is probably the most prominent example of this, so I can't say whether this is a competence assignment or whether it's an assignment for confidence, basically, because it's somebody where Putin believes he's going to tell me the truth and he's going to make sure that is going to be happening. Then I found the data who has been sent. Samat battalion from the Pyatnashka brigade, Chechen Ahmad units, all still to Kursk. Parts of the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade from Vovchansk, 2 VDV battalions from Kherson, artillery parts from the northern group in Kharkiv, the 38 and 36th Motorized Rifle Brigade from Sabotage, 272nd and 488 Motorized Rifle Regiments from Kupiansk. So far, the Russians are bringing in forces from all parts of the front line, but from everything I see, it's rear units. It's units in rest and recuperation. It's units that were reserve. It's parts of units. In a lot of the cases, it's not the full regiment. It's a battalion of them, or maybe 2 battalions, but those are from units that are not engaged. Those battalions were not engaged in the front line, so the immediate front line, from what it seems, hasn't been weakened anywhere, at least as of yet. Then we have news from Sabotage and Partisan. Now, German media is reporting that that there was a sabotage attempt on a barracks of the Bundeswehr, of the German Armed Forces. Somebody has cut open the wire and they are afraid that the drinking water has been poisoned. So far, the latest I've seen was not confirmed yet, and immediately later they said that a second one was also Geilenkirchen, again probably sabotage in the drinking water. It might have happened in the last hour that we have more details, but at least my latest information didn't show any details if they had found anything already, but it might have been that there was actually a Russian sabotage attempt or a biological weapons attack, depending on how you want to interpret it. Then we have China admitting that their ship has damaged the Baltic Sea gas pipeline. They claim it was an accident. Germany, on the other hand, has issued an arrest warrant for a Ukrainian diving teacher because of Nord Stream. They accuse him to be the main perpetrator in the sabotage of Nord Stream, but they said even if it is him and they just accuse him right now, it won't change the support for Ukraine, because Ukraine is still a victim in a war where it is being attacked. Troop generation, we have informations from Russia. The Supreme Court is preparing the legal framework for an amnesty for everyone accused of a crime during the court cases, in case he signs up with the military or is being mobilized. Basically, if you commit a crime, they're going to tell you we can go through and you go to prison, or you go directly to the army. That seems to be a way to boost the recruitment as of now. Then we have Russia talking about cooperations and contracts with other states in its Army 2024 fair, which is currently happening. But we have Riba saying, not going to happen. Funny enough, the pro-Russian mill blogger is saying that the best they can do is maintenance and modernization, because whatever Russia is producing is going to be used on the front line. And this was obvious at this point. And finally, I have a short video of you. This should also be from the Army 2024 We see a moving, it's a Panzer, obviously a decoy, a Panzer decoy. You can see it's blown up, but it even makes the radar move to make it look more realistic, probably heated as well. This is something where the Russians want to lure in Ukrainian weapons in the near future. But that was it from me for now. If you enjoyed this situation report, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think about the current developments and the assessment about the Kursk offensive? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.